Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. You guys haven't seen me in a while. I've been taking a wonderful Lenten retreat from all the video game news, but I had a couple of exceptions of things that I wanted to follow. One of those was No Rest for the Wicked, which we had that event earlier in March, and the updates for that game were coming out here in at the end of April. So I'm looking forward to being able to play some video games again real soon. The other one was the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal, where they go into the details, talk about the games and more, and that has been dominating the news this week in terms of video game news. There might be a little bit of crossover with some tariff conversations because gamers are not happy. There's some frustration, especially around price. There's some frustration, and it's going to be a bigger conversation, especially about the state of the industry, especially with gaming. It's been going on for a little bit of a while now here on the show. But joining me today, we got Scrag and Mark back on the show. We'll go with Scrag, who's been kind of fulfilling my role as I've been on my little Lenten retreat. How are you doing, sir? What are you playing?
What have I been playing? I've been playing a lot of Wizardry Variants Daphne, which is it was a mobile game that's based on the old Wizardry games, which I think like 15 years ago or so got sold to a Japanese studio. So pretty good. Lots of grinding, lots of stress because it is a gacha game and your characters can die permanently, so you have to be very careful. But other than that, not much.
Not much. Mobile games, that is also probably going to come up here in the show today because we are just seeing so many ways to play games, so many things to do. Mark, like the game, how is it going, sir? What are you playing?
Lately, I've been playing Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. I think the last few months, I finally have played through the entire trilogy of the Xenoblade games, and I am very impressed with Takahashi as a story creator, and I enjoy his games. I put probably about 30 hours on Chronicles X DE that just came out 2 weeks ago. And besides that, Power Wash Simulator. That game got me. I've been pricing out power washers now at Walmart, and I'm ready to make a move. My house is going to get freaking clean this spring. So that's the gist of it for me.
Man, that sounds awesome. I've been fighting off a cold, so you might hear a little bit of that in my voice. And I haven't been playing any video games, so I've just been kind of getting back into movies. I've seen a couple of really good ones. For any couples out there that are listening to this nerdy video game podcast, I recommend Redeeming Love. You can find that rent that on Amazon Prime. Absolutely fantastic. And last time I watched Homestead was actually a real kind of surprise movie. A bunch of big actors that I've followed for a while, and I went into both not knowing anything about them. Very happy I did. Both very enjoyable. And tomorrow I've already got my tickets. Me and the kids are going to go see the Minecraft movie. So if any video game has been played, that is the one and only. And that's the perfect segue into our biggest discussion. I got to react to the Switch event. Beyond reacting to the Switch event, I got to then hang out with my kids, and we kind of watched it all together as a family. It's one of the things that I've used in terms of argumentation for where I think the industry's headed, why I think it's heading that way, is I look at kind of how my kids are, how they talk about it. How are children talking about video games from their perspective? Because I've seen and noticed two trends. The older we get, either the dopamine hit of the games doesn't last as long, but it seems like the angriest gamers out there are both the ones that are chronically online social media gamers, but also they're definitely in their 40s at this point, and it's just unsatisfying. But kids, I'm like, oh, they're playing this, horrible game that I would be like, this is not even worth anybody's time, and they're having an absolute blast with it. But to give you guys some context, the number one question, actually, I'm going to ask you guys this as a question. What do you think their number one question to me was throughout the entirety of the Switch 2 reveal?
When can we get one?
That was probably their number two question. They were excited about it, but that was not the one. That's the question. Dad, they're not showing Minecraft. Like, does this play Minecraft? And I was like, that is also a testament to, I think, the state of the industry. Is this just a better Minecraft playing machine? So that's something that I thought was an interesting takeaway, because we have seen, I think, massive shifts in gaming, and we've seen a huge fallout online. I'm going to go with Scrag, because you said in the pre-show to us in chat that I might not like what you have to say about what we've seen with the Switch. Do you want to take it from here, sir?
I mean, do you want me to hold back?
No.
Can I cuss?
Yes, but try to keep it like with tasteful.
All right. I don't think it was a good presentation. I think that the pricing was insane. The games that they showed off were, at least to me, not that interesting, except for with one exception, the new From Software game, which good move from software. That's really a good way to appeal to your core audiences by making them purchase a device they never would have bought anyway. That's awesome. Let's see what else. Oh, they added a mouse to the controller. That's cool. So like, are we admitting that mouse is better now, or is it just another Nintendo gimmick? Also, let's see. The magnets in the controllers on the side, you drop that thing one time, you better hope those things don't go like into a drainage ditch or something. Probably not the safest thing in the world, but whatever. What else? Oh,
the
LCD.
Question of magnets and all
LCD.
that. Yeah.
LCD, really? On a $500 device, you're going to put LCD in there?
So they can sell you the OLED version here in 3 or 4 years.
Also, too, yeah, they want to sell us new micro SD cards too, so that's great. Yeah, they only work with Express cards, so just for you Switch migrants to Switch 2, you're gonna have to buy new SD cards, and they are the most expensive variant. So that's cool. Let's see what else. I'm having trouble remembering my rant from the other day. Oh yeah, the most important thing: physical games with no games on them. That's great. You're gonna pay $90. You're gonna pay $90 for a physical game that doesn't have the game on it. That's excellent. Let's do more of that, please. I'm of course being sarcastic. This sucks for people who have bad internet. Really bad. So, like, for example, I live in the country. When I first moved out here, we did not have Starlink. I bought a new PS5 and a PS5 game. Turns out I have to download 80 gigabytes to play that game.
Ooh, yeah.
So that took a week to download because it kept failing, kept disconnecting. So at least for those specific types of people, this is probably not the greatest thing in the world, because essentially what we have is an entirely digital system, with the exception of the few games that they are going to be able to fit onto physical games, which will cost more. Why, I don't know. Probably distribution or whatever, but they've been the same cost as digital games forever. So how about, instead of making the physical games more expensive, let's keep those at the same, like $60 that everyone agrees to, 70 maybe, and then let's make the digital ones $50, because you're removing millions of dollars of overhead there. But no, let's just make the digital more expensive and then also make the physical more expensive as well. Now you could say this is because of like the tariffs or whatever. I don't buy that, because they just put out an announcement saying, oh, hey, we're delaying pre-orders because of the tariffs. So actually, basically, they did not take that into account when they first came up with these prices. So now,
when they announced the prices, the tariffs hadn't officially been announced, etc.
Well, yes and no. I think it would be foolish to think any major global multinational company didn't try to predict to some degree. Now, to your point, I would say that they probably didn't expect what they did see. But that's the challenge of a inconsistent environment from a geopolitical trade perspective. Just to kind of comment that, I do think those types of factors were considered in pricing. To what extent, it's hard to say. We're not inside that business room.
My final point that I will leave you guys with, because I could probably keep going for the whole hour, just based on my irritation with Nintendo as a company as a whole. When their servers shut down in 15 years, you're not going to be able to play these games anymore. We've seen it multiple times. The Wii, the DS, the 3DS, the Wii U, when they shut those servers down, it's going to be gone. However, we have had emulation before, but due to these like physical cards that aren't going to have the games on them, actually, that's going to mean there will be no way for you to actually emulate that at all unless you manage to hack the Switch 2, which I'm sure is against their terms of service, which I see more as a play to stop emulation, legal emulation, rather than like a cool new feature that helps people, because it really doesn't help anyone. All it does is make the games more expensive and less accessible to people who just want to play games.
I think there, just to call on that point, there was a lot of reactions to the whole game key thing. One thing I will say is it seems to be a play to help out publishers and developers to get more SKUs on shelves and touch points with potential customers. I'm glad you mentioned the PS5 thing, because when I was reading that, I was like, I don't notice any difference here between what this is versus what I get with all my PlayStation games, right? Where I haven't gotten a PlayStation game, I don't know how long, where I just put it in and play. There's always a download, right?
Right.
Now for the Switch 1, the way they did this was you just got a piece of paper in the case, and that was it. And once you downloaded that game, you couldn't do anything else with it. I will say I'm happy about the idea that I can still trade this game in or sell it or give it to a friend and not have to worry about, being stuck with a digital version only of the game. The other thing is these are only, I think, like 1 gigabyte or less cartridges now too. So then it gives that incentive for publishers to say, we'll make a physical version of this game. You don't just have to buy the digital version of the game. But to your point about servers, I mean, yeah, that's the dystopia we're in for almost every single gaming platform, unless you buy it on a DRM free platform, right? I don't know how Steam works with that, but I know there are like GOG and stuff like that. I am optimistic that we could at least expect all first party Nintendo games and a good bit of second and third party games to be on the cartridge. The one reason being is they've patented technology to essentially enable large games to be stored at a smaller percentage in terms of like 1080 assets versus the 4K assets, because they're using that DLSS technology to achieve that. So there is a lot of ways for developers and publishers to squeeze that on the cartridge. The willingness has to be on the publisher to do it, and if they see the cost value benefit of it too. I mean, I think those are real complaints. I guess when I'm hearing that, I just don't know if they're exclusive to Nintendo. And I would say that about everything, including the pricing overall.
That's why I don't have a PlayStation.
Yeah. Are you only a PC gamer then, I assume?
Yeah, I only have a PC, my phone, and a Steam Deck. That's literally all I have anymore. Because at least with Steam, I know what I'm getting into. I know it's all digital, and I know that if I lose my account, then it is what it is. But at least I can recover those games in another way. But like GOG and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at least with PC, you know what you're getting into. It's all digital. Whereas it feels like with the Nintendo consoles, they're more marketed towards families with children who want to have something that they could buy their kids. No muss, no fuss. Here's the thing, play the thing, leave me alone kind of deal. It sounds kind of bad, but I've seen it happen.
There is a truth to that. Everybody's been out to a restaurant and seen the kid, shoved in with a tablet or a phone or a Nintendo.
Yeah, I have cousins who their kids all have Switches, and they all play their Switches constantly, which they, to their credit, are very reserved with that. Like, hey, you need to do this, not that right now or whatever. But I mean, I see it. Kids get handed a Switch and they're expected to just be able to make it work and play or whatever. But as soon as something comes up like, Mom, I need the internet to download a patch or they won't play the game, it's like, oh, now I got to get you the password. Now I got to, give you my credit card or whatever the deal is. It's a hassle. It's an obstacle between getting your kid a thing that you want to get them and them actually being able to use it. So imagine, if you will, someone without internet access. That's still a thing today. If you have just a phone plan and you live in an apartment with your 2 or 3 kids or whatever, you can't afford internet or TV. You literally cannot, like, you just spent $600 on a brick essentially if they can't play that game. And there's no reason for them to have 1 gigabyte cards. You can get a terabyte card for like $50 now Like
yeah,
there is
but the
literally no
game
reason.
price would be even more expensive. And to that scenario
But-
you called out,
but
it
it
doesn't sound like anyone is gaming at all in that scenario. Like
Right.
they could probably game on a tablet.
Well, they
Not
could
even.
game on
They'd
a
have to game
Switch
on a.
with the
Well,
cartridge that has the game on it.
that's it. They couldn't game on a PC. Could have to download the
Right.
game. They couldn't. So like in that scenario you're painting, the Switch still ends up being the best case of usability, besides the mobile phone that has the phone connection, or if there's
Well,
a
the Switch 1 would be right.
well,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, there's a lot of pontification about how many publishers will do that, but we know Cyberpunk. Hopefully, you're not buying that for your kids. That's going to be all on the cartridge, which I was surprised about, to be honest with you. And the cool thing there is that they confirmed this through the Washington Post through interviews that build they've showed, one is running. Gene Park of the Washington Post said, he's like, I played it a ton on the Steam Deck. It's running better on the Switch too. And it only took 7 weeks to port, which, again, that's not the final port, but to say we got this up and running, what is playing better on the Steam Deck than on the Steam Deck, only took us 7 weeks to port, which has me excited about more third-party patches. But to that point, I think Nintendo's going to prioritize all their first-party games. If they don't, that would be a big criticism to levy on them. But again, I would just say, like, in that case, like, I'm not buying my kid probably anything else besides a Nintendo family-friendly game, at least maybe until he's like ready for Doom per se. But got to teach him about ripping and tearing demons at some point. That's the Catholic in me. It is a struggle, Scrag. I think you're getting at something that is ubiquitous in gaming in our current environment. Brian, we've talked about this too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of two minds of this, and just for some context, Brian, this is kind of what I said. Like, okay, I come at this from the perspective of I am a co-owner of a small game development company.
Mm-hmm.
I have an MBA. I work globally with my clients in my consulting job. I've spent time in Congress on tax policy work, not a voted in official. Gosh, that would never happen, but someone hired me. And so, we're at this point where I think in a year, what Nintendo Switch pricing looks like, the second one, is going to feel like a breath of fresh air compared to what we see with the increased cost. That is if PlayStation, Xbox, and PC gaming still pursues this higher end fidelity focus, which leads to a larger cost. I'm hopeful that the economic situation we're in is going to force people to become more efficient, where we're not going to have a $300 million game for one platform. We're going to say maybe we should start going for the lowest common denominator. And I think that's because of the lack of real wage growth for decades and develop in mature markets like America. And I also think that's because all these game developers and hardware manufacturers, they have their eyes on the markets that are actually growing, which is Asia Pacific. And they're not playing on PC. I mean, there might be some PC cafes. They're not playing on PlayStation. They're playing on mobile devices. So a lot of these, I think, in the next 10 years, you're going to see people wanting to get games more on devices that would be, compatible with a cell phone, a tablet, or a Switch.
And rumors are that like Xbox is doing just that.
Yeah,
we've all heard, especially it sounds like they're kind of trying to probably have their feet in both camps with a handheld Xbox, perhaps, maybe. We'll see. Nothing confirmed. But then also another, quote unquote, high end non-PC graphics card. My question to both of you in this case, because I'd like Mark to be able to finish the point you're making before I jumped in. But my question here is that, like, I do see that there is a price point that I feel a lot of people beyond exclusives, because we know those sell, but those are also becoming kind of a noose around the neck of some of these games where their budgets are so high. But we've seen that there is a price point where people just start continuing to migrate to PC because of things just like Scrag has brought up with Steam and, like game preservation. What you're kind of getting into, and you can also then run the biggest library of games rather than sitting here and have a focus in on exclusives. And things like the Steam Deck are an interesting kind of thing to kind of put a little feather on the cap there, because when you start factoring in the price of the Switch 2 right now coming at $500, it isn't that much more of a jump to say, hey, maybe I'll get a Steam Deck instead.
I mean, yeah, because you can get a Steam Deck for $350, and have hundreds of thousands of games to play rather than 6. So,
and you still have to download them too, though. So
You do
it's
still
Well,
have
yeah.
to download them.
so
to be fair.
again, what are the important factors there? And I will say this: the Steam Deck is a great device. Steam Deck
Yeah.
OLED, something I have. I think the Steam Deck OLED, which at 256 is what 550 right now, still new. I think
it's 450 or 5. Let me check.
there was a
$600 version, I believe, but
there's a $600 version.
which has
What
more
is-
memory.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Scrags.
I'm
but
looking it up right now.
Yeah, I
'cause
thought
let's see.
on Steam's website, you could find it on various other sites, but I looked at Steam, I'm pretty sure the other day.
Yeah, so it's 549 for the OLED 512.
And that's the lowest model, right? The 256 gigabytes.
The 256 OLED. The 256 LCD is 399
Yes,
or
yes.
300 refurbished for 350. I can't find it.
Yeah, so I think this is a good transition point too to just talk about like, the hardware itself. I was surprised it had 120 refresh rate screen. I never thought I'd ever seen
that
Nintendo
is great.
care about that at all. And like, I would love an OLED screen.
That's something easier for them to do with Nintendo games, though, as opposed to like because we know Call of Duty's coming to the Switch.
Yeah,
I guarantee you. I mean, if I'm wrong, man, this would be the greatest thing I messed up on. But I would say like I don't anticipate Call of Duty running at 120 frames a second on Switch 2.
Not on the highest settings, no.
Not on the highest settings, no. And that again depends on the architecture and the ease of porting it, right? Because if you have an architecture that allows you to port it to the optimal setting, then yeah, you are right. They're gonna have the Nintendo games run the best on that. But I mean, I would love an OLED screen, but we'd be paying a lot more for it. And as much as the price is, I think, shocking to some, I think they still did think about every nook and cranny of how they could kind of penny pinch with what they do with that device.
Because we know Nintendo sells these for a profit. They do not do what Xbox does. PlayStation, I think, does it to start, but they quickly get to where they sell for a profit. That being said, the price I'm not shocked by. I was thinking they might come in at 400. Like I was like at a minimum, and then coming in at 450, it's like, kind of makes sense. But then you got like kind of points like Reinhardt is saying that if the Switch 2's price isn't the tariff price, something like 560 with the 25% tariff, I don't know if they're going to adjust that price, or if that's probably some of the conversations that they're having, because like that's going to be something completely new and to my knowledge, unless they are going to start manufacturing Switch 2 in America, I don't know if that ever. I don't think we're going to see that happen.
No. And we know that the majority of manufacturing now for Switch 2 is in Vietnam. I think it's under Foxconn. Foxconn's a big manufacturer of a lot of technical devices, including the iPhone. Now we know Apple's transitioning manufacturing capabilities to America. What is it, a couple billion they're investing in manufacturing?
It's like 500 billion for the Houston area. So
yeah, that's not going to be tomorrow that happens, right? That's going to take some time to get up and running. And that's the discussion they're having right now, especially coincidentally. I think this is why Vietnam, the prime minister, I don't know what they call it, the head of the Communist Party for Vietnam, I think that's why he was one of the first Asian Pacific leaders to engage with the US and Trump over the tariffs, because they did just announce today that, hey, Vietnam, we want to somehow make a deal to where we could have zero tariffs on each other. And, current administration was like, that sounds great. Let's make a deal. Nintendo has to now think, okay, what is that deal? Will it pan out? Will it be specific on certain industries? And how do we make our price work amongst the uncertainty? I wouldn't be surprised if they don't change price. We're not going to see a lower price anytime soon. I also wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit of a price increase as well. But it's hard to tell. And this is where Nintendo's at right now too. They get all this consumer feedback. Like, have you guys seen the chat on their Treehouse events since the other day? Like, it's insane. A lot of people just spamming raise the price and lower the price. There's just it's all over the place. But yeah, it's hard for them. I will say this. I don't think this is Nintendo's fault. I think they're launching at a really tough time, because no matter what, like everyone's posted about it, if you look at the real cost adjusted for inflation compared to past consoles, like a Switch game from 2017 is about $82 today. Right. And yeah, that sucks. Inflation sucks. The problem again for us consumers is that our income hasn't reflected that inflation either.
Correct.
And
That's one of the biggest pain points.
Yeah.
Because so that's where one of the things I've seen, and I've made this argument across the entire industry. We've seen all of these different kind of pocket movements. The biggest and loudest online is the Gamergate 2.0 movement in and of itself. But accompanying that is this level that prices have gone up and gamers aren't perceiving the value of that price, with some exception. Baldur's Gate 3 being a key exception to that. People feel, and they're like, I would have happily paid more. I've seen that argument made for Baldur's Gate 3 to where people are like, I really enjoyed that game and what they've done. I've bought multiple copies as a way of saying thank you. So we do know that gamers are willing to spend the money but the product and the value proposition has to be there. Otherwise, what do? Well, I think if we just look at the last 2 years, they go find another alternative source, either a high quality video game that they feel that $70, $80, whatever that cost is worth it to them. Or we've seen a bigger shift into those $40 AA games that really dominated all of 2024. Like you start to think of Helldivers, you think of Power World, you think of Enshrouded. Like you're seeing these games sell multiple millions and they're not coming in at that price. We also know, for like just historical fact, Nintendo doesn't lower the price of their games. So them coming in at $80 and $90 physical, you might see that if they accompany like the Mario 2 movie when it comes out, after it puts out over $1 billion, you might see them discount, their Mario games by $5 again. But like they don't typically put them on sale outside of, like it's a very tightly controlled, product and value. But I do sympathize with a lot of the gamers, because when it's all said and done, like if the value proposition isn't there, like it's your money. No, you don't owe Nintendo a dime. You don't owe PlayStation or Xbox a dime. Feel free to just kind of go with it. But to your point, Mark, and I agree with it 100%. Like if you adjust for, like I was paying more for video games when I was saving up for my SNES than the Switch cost me today when you adjust for inflation. It's absurd. Yeah. The biggest problem here is our income hasn't risen with inflation. So we are feeling absolutely squeezed, and video games historically have been a really good place to put your money in, especially in times that when times are tough, because I paid. So we have Cinemark, their plan. So I get a free movie ticket, a month. We don't go to the movies that often, but those movie tickets pile up, and then I use them to go take the kids to see a movie that we want to see. We saw Sonic 3, absolutely had a great time. Now we're going to go see Minecraft. Cost wise, my dad's coming to the movie, so I bought 7 tickets. I had 5 on credit. That was after we saved on the fees, right? We still spent $40 for a movie that's not even 2 hours. But then you factor into the time. Like I did it without my credits, and it would have been over $110 to take my kids to go see a movie for 2 hours. So $1 per hour of joy. Video games still absolutely has it. But just like I alluded to at the start of the show, first and foremost, the number one game that my kids were interested in outside of they're excited about Mario Kart, but it's Minecraft, and they're going to go back to Minecraft. And guess what? We already own Minecraft. I don't necessarily need to, obviously go get Switch 2s so that my kids can play Minecraft. It's there. That's what they're playing. And guess what? Fortnite too is also running on the Switch. Okay. Like why, I'm excited because I'm the nerd, right? Like I already said, like I'm the enthusiast. I'm absolutely, buying it. I've been saving my money so I can hopefully get a pre-order one. But like we said, they've delayed the pre-order date due to the tariff conversation. Who knows what's going to see with that? All that being said, they've already got my money, and I'm the most I've said this multiple times. Like I share some of this frustration Scrag has at Nintendo. Like the fact is that the thing that I'm so excited about being game chat on the Switch 2 is I said in my reaction to 2008, it's actually a 2006. I think that's when the Xbox 360 truly brought that into the entire ecosystem, that game developers didn't have to create it themselves. The Xbox just did it for them. And here we are, 2025, and Switch 2 is getting game chat, guys. Like I actually am excited about that, but it's so funny because what is it? What do we got to wait another decade for, Nintendo? Like, yeah, like they're gonna slow play this out to where it's like, what new internet feature that everybody's been using for 25 years should we add to the system now?
You know, that's one of the yeah.
Make you pay for it.
I like the fact that it's like a Discord in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
Discord voice chat, and I'm also happy about the fact that, again, like, I'm excited. This is going to be my kid's first video game console launch, right? I'm excited to be like, hey, you know, I showed him the trailer for Donkey Kong Bonanza. He was entranced.
Yeah.
I was also like, doesn't that guy look exactly like your Nanu? And I think he kind of agreed with it. You know, this is one of the things why I like Nintendo's design philosophy. In a conversation of like business innovation, there's something called the innovator's dilemma. You might have seen books on it before, but there's this parable of like the blue ocean and the red ocean. The red ocean, everyone's battling out over the same features, right? This is Xbox, Sony, and PC, and their features that they're really fighting over is like best state of art graphics, right? Highest end gaming experience. 4K. Sony's going to start pushing 8K. Hopefully they back away from that because ain't no one buying an 8K TV. Right. So they're
not with these tariffs.
No, not they ain't made in America. So they're fighting over these things. And Nintendo historically has always said, like, let's look at the blue ocean. This is open, wide. How can we expand the gaming market? This explains a lot of their decisions for why they do make choices that people really enjoy. Things like the DS, which a lot of people that were not traditional gamers bought. Things like the Wii, the simplification of the controls. I, in a lot of ways, hated it for certain games, but you wouldn't have seen grandparents buying a Wii just to play Wii bowling without that, right? And this is also why they don't do certain things like, hey, we don't care about achievements. We don't care about voice chat. That's not as much of a priority. We're going to do it when we feel like we can do it right. And that comes with pros and cons. Like, I get it. I hated the fact that when I would play games on my Switch with my cousin, I'd have to like call him up on my cell phone because he doesn't have Discord or anything like that. But it's just how they operate, and that operation method I do think has been a stabilizing force in the gaming industry for a long time. I think you mentioned, games like Minecraft and games that have traditionally been, we're not seeing the value anymore. That's how I feel about Ubisoft games in a lot of ways. But what's happened for the last 5 to 10 years is I think a lot of those AAA publishers have been able to maintain cost where it is because they've been subsidizing that with monetization, microtransactions in games. Thankfully, Nintendo's never really done that. Maybe they will, and then that's a whole different story. But we're going to see Grand Theft Auto launch above $80 easily.
Do you think it's coming in 100?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's more. But if it's more, it's going to have like a bunch of currency with it and all that stuff too. Day one, early access, whatever. We're going to see Ubisoft look at that and go, well, they're doing it. Why don't we do it? And then they'll do it for 4 months and drop it down like $30 or something like that. And they're still going to have microtransactions in their games too, because those games cost $200 million plus to make, right? So that business practice leads to, I think, poor decisions in their long run. It leads to layoffs. It leads to crashes or light crashes in a way where Nintendo raising it the way they did, I think I feel like 5 years from now, we'll say that was like the most sensible push they could make compared to where we see everything else go in costs, especially if things don't get better in terms of inflation and wage growth and all of that as well.
Where do you see Xbox and PS6, trying to price point themselves for their next generation, which I would say is pretty close to the heels of this one, assuming that they don't, because we know Xbox that they're not doing a Pro model. PS5 Pro is already out, so that means in my mind the next iteration is the PS6.
I think the analyst reports believe PS6 would be somewhere around 2027. And I think if things don't drastically change, at least we'll see a $700 console. I will be surprised if it launches less than that, just given what the PS5 Pro can do. And that's bringing on technology that's already been around for a bit in the PC space, right? With AI, all that stuff, PSSR, which they're now going with AMD's model. Xbox is going to be a very successful gaming publisher. I think they're going to be a very successful gaming publisher, and it seems like, Brian, and I feel like you have more insight here, but I feel like they're adopting their OEM partner model as they have with PCs, with hardware devices for Xbox
Yeah.
division.
Right.
So
Well, we're seeing that with obviously several different systems. Steam's also doing that thing. They're partnering to where it's like there's going to be the first quote unquote Steam Deck that launches this summer, but the manufacturer is something completely different. So it's like I see Xbox doing that model. It's what Xbox is. Microsoft has been historically a software company, and Apple, I would say, has historically been a hardware company. I feel Nintendo is falling more. At least it aligns closer with the Apple model. It doesn't have all the games. It doesn't run all the games. It doesn't need to because they're just going to sell the hardware at a profit, and it's going to kind of achieve this blue ocean niche that they have. My hope is with the Switch 2 is that they open it up in some ways to allow for cloud gaming. So all of a sudden you get access to a bigger variety of your library, because the thing that's going to dominate, and the thing that does dominate my game time, being that I'm somebody who has good internet, and I know not everybody has that, is a handheld that does it all. Like I don't need, these single-use devices anymore. It's hard to justify the cost of them when I have a device that already does that very, very thing, right? Like my Switches, if they weren't so old, and you can kind of see here, like, yeah, this nub has come off. It's got, it's definitely been dropped. It's got some things broken on it. We still can't find my OLED model. My kids lost that somewhere in the house after one of my kids threw up on it, and the Joy-Cons don't work on it anymore. But at least the Pro controllers do. All in all, like the Switch 2, if I wasn't such a fanboy, like I can't find a justification for spending the money outside of the fact that I'm ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously the kids are excited. I'm excited to see their face when hopefully I get to bring one home. And we've already created, Mark and I, for anybody who wants to know, I've already created a pact. We're going to try to pre-order handfuls of them, so that way if we end up getting them, it's like I could just ship you yours, etc. Because you don't know. That's just how these deals go down.
We won't put any extra tariffs on each other either.
No extra tariffs on this friendship.
Yeah. They've done cloud gaming already. I've been, and that's because the Switch, where it's super popular again in APAC markets, 5G access is very popular. Like I think Kingdom Hearts launched as a cloud version on the Switch, and I think Resident Evil 8 or 7 did as well. One of the newer Resident Evils. I've never experienced it because if I can play natively, I'll prefer that. Yeah, but yeah, that's definitely something they're considering. And I'm a little bit optimistic. Nintendo does a good job at keeping their core philosophy and handling it down to new, younger employees. And as we saw in that direct, the pioneers of this hardware, on the average, was a lot younger. We didn't see Miyamoto's son. We didn't see anyone else. We saw people that look like they might be my age. Yeah, and I do think that's why they probably went like, no, we need 120 hertz. We need 4K. We need these things. How can we do it, though, where we're still keeping costs down? So I wouldn't be surprised if there is something like that, where there's a lot of opportunities for cloud gaming, to the extent that you're connecting to other libraries. Who knows, right? Yeah. There's always been the dream of Game Pass on Switch for like 4 years, right? People have been rumoring about that for a very long time. I don't know if that would happen. But.
Speaking of pipe dreams for Switch, Brian, Final Fantasy?
That's a good question. We did get the announcement, Final Fantasy VII Remake making its way over to Switch, which I question, does that signal that it could also come to the Xbox? Or is there imagine if there's some contractual carve out that it's like, you cannot release this on Xbox. It's on PC. It's on PlayStation. It's going to be on Switch. Xbox over there going like, hey, like we finally got Final Fantasy 14. My question on that, though, is that do you guys see Final Fantasy 14 coming to the Switch too?
I think Scragg's point in the chat was good. What you said about it depends if Nintendo wants a cut of the subscription model.
Xbox is getting a cut of the subscription model for on the Xbox.
Then I don't see why Square would say no. Isn't that their most profitable game right now? Just overall,
pretty much ever.
Yeah. They need to keep those.
Their
profits.
Second most profitable is Final Fantasy 11. So it's like finally,
okay,
11 has done really well for them as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at the performance of the remake series so far for 7, right?
I mean, if the Switch 2 can run it, which I'm fairly confident it can with the specs that they have laid out, I don't really see a reason not to do it other than just like maybe chat considerations. I don't know if there are any Switch games that allow people to chat with like literally anyone with text.
I feel like there have been examples, but you are right that Nintendo will probably make sure they have a conversation about that to see if there's any mitigation they could do, but I doubt there would be.
Yeah, I know they did
yeah.
it for Xbox for a bit. I don't know if they're still doing it or not, but yeah.
What did they do on Xbox?
They added some more comprehensive language filters.
Okay.
For example, some of the names of the cities were getting censored because they contained
Really?
other words in them. So
what were the offensive names of cities? I've played that game. I don't recall anything being offensive.
was it not Bastock? That's Final Fantasy 11. What am I thinking of?
Gridania, old
Wait. What was that one, Brian?
Limenza, Gridania.
That was I guess what were the filtered ones?
Let me look it up. I don't.
He's got to look it up to that.
I remember
it was a thing. Like Xbox, it was the Xbox system. It wasn't the Final Fantasy system flagging them. It was Xbox going like, "Hey, this is a violation of our policies."
I speaking of filter systems, Monster Hunter Wilds had a really funny one because you get to name your companion.
Mm-hmm.
I named my cat General Sal's because take the humor where you go. No issues there. My friend tried to name his cat Biscuits. And it was like, no, you can't do that. That's inappropriate. I'm like, what? Because it's something you could eat? Like, clearly, it did not think that people were going to make the joke I did over biscuits. Some of that stuff is silly.
Biscuits also? I've heard like pets called Biscuit.
Yeah, that's why he named it. His bunny rabbit's named Biscuits. So
Yeah.
he named it. Yeah. But, I don't know if they just take like a mass
Make comedy
list.
legal.
Yeah. Gosh.
Oh goodness.
Halicarnus was filtered.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's interesting.
Which I
Is
think
it
that's
hell?
a dungeon or a server.
Maybe I'll finally get past the Realm Reborn patch content if it comes out in the Switch too, because I stopped there. It was so hard. I was so happy to be.
It is the like the wall that if people could, like, I always encourage people is like, if you could just make it to Heaven's Word, you're gonna have a really good time. I'm hearing people are kind of going through that wall right now, again with the Dawn Trail, but I haven't experienced it yet. I'm looking forward to when I finish this weight loss journey, getting to pick that back up. But I enjoyed playing Viper and Pictomancer, and I'd like to see what all the drama is about, if nothing else, because sometimes it pops up in my feed, and I've been avoiding all video game stuff. So there's been a handful of videos of people just pissed off at Final Fantasy. Like someone's like, I used to love Yoshi P. Oh no. And then I'm like, add to watch later. And might have to do a giant react stream after Easter where it's just like, let me catch up on what everybody's pissed off about. Cause it's for me, it's a little bit of poetic. Cause it's like, yeah, I guys, we've been critiquing the game. We've said these are going to be some big problems that are going to come up. Turns out once again, that was correct. And it sucks because there's, a lot of people who really want that. I think it'd be interesting to see if it comes to the Switch too. I would think that the reasons why it wouldn't aren't financial. It's because at some point they're going to want to get off the PS4 architecture and go to a PS5 forward. And if you introduce the game on the Switch, one reason why we didn't see them introduce Final Fantasy 14 on the Xbox One. No, they're on Xbox Series X and forward. It's still on PS4. Switch 2 would be, in my mind, PS4. And then if they put it on the Switch 2, I think you would see actually a lot of Final Fantasy 14 players who are on PC, or at least on PC, PS5 and forward, going like, oh no, now we're not going to get this upgrade that we've been longing for. They've been doing all this real good work on their memory and adding in all these things. That means that as soon as they drop PS4, it's just going to get even better. But that would say, at a minimum, I would think that you're not going to launch it on a system for one expansion cycle. You'd be looking at a 4-year cycle, which would take people into 9.0 at a minimum.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. It again, I think it kind of relates to where is gaming going in general with continuing to push in that direction of more power, more performance, or are they trying to stabilize themselves for a bit to where they start seeing more efficiencies with cost development too? It runs on the Series S, right? The Final Fantasy 14 on
Yeah.
Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really done a breakdown yet of like raw power. Like obviously from a raw power perspective, the Switch 2 is not the PS5, but it seems to be thanks to these tensor cores, like NVIDIA confirmed it's 10 times more powerful than past utilization of these systems on the chips. It seems like with this DLS technology, they are able to punch way above the PS4's weight. And I would probably assume it's closer to Series S, but it's hard to say. I don't know. Again, does Square say, hey, we make more money by doing this? They have to consider how many people are playing on those older architectures too.
Mhm.
There's a
They'd
lot
also
of
have to consider,
PS4s.
like, would people be willing to buy the game on Switch with a subscription? Because
Yeah.
you generally think, especially Nintendo, like, yeah, my kids, I'm going to play it. I'm not going to subscribe them. Like there's no family bundle right now for like Final Fantasy 14. Same concept with them not, like their weird bundling of prices between 11 and 14 as a temporary thing. Of like, make it permanent and you'll have my money, Square. This temporary discount seems really absurd. And so I don't know, like we've seen a lot of frustration, like not subscription model targets a completely different audience, and that audience most likely already has the game.
Yeah, they're playing it in some way or another on PC or something else, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Or even on Steam Deck. It runs on Steam Deck, right?
It runs great on Steam Deck.
Yeah, I've played mine on my Steam Deck for a bit. So weird getting used to non-mouse and keyboard controls. That took me like 3 hours.
You gotta use controller, man.
Controller is the best.
Yeah, I mean everyone says that, but I played like 60 hours on mouse and keyboard and my brain did not compute.
Yeah.
I feel like we spent a lot of time fairly critiquing the Switch 2. I know we don't have a lot of time left, Brown, but I don't know if you wanted to talk about some of the things that you're excited about with the platform itself too, and some of the games, because
I'm excited for the magnets. I really do actually hope that solves some of my like just a technical like things are easy to kind of keep the system together, and we don't I really am hopeful for also a higher quality product that can really kind of weather the storm. The fact is they're doing 4K on docked mode. I'm like, okay, that's great. That's gonna make it look even better on the TV, and also backwards compatible. That was always my biggest concern. They upgraded the internal memory, obviously being that they're going to be doing 4K. It makes sense. The games are getting bigger, but I honestly thought Nintendo was going to screw us with a 64 gig base memory internal. Got to buy that, that card because their 32 gigs on the Switch has just been absolutely painful, making it an extra requirement. When we talk about price, I'm actually not frustrated by it because I was already mentally like prepared for a price around this point. Because also when you factor in how much I just spent on the Switch when it first launched with getting pro controllers, games, yada, 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 I think I spent $800 when the Switch 1 launched. I had that money budgeted. So it wasn't like, oh, okay, that, it was just like sit there, execute, get these games, get the controllers and have a good time. I think essentially it always is going to come down to gameplay when it's all said and done. And Nintendo, like I really love their games. I think the only software frustration was we didn't get a 3D Mario announcement. I was really hoping that we would see maybe an Odyssey 2 or something along those lines. But the fact is that I'm going to most likely, as with all new hardware, it's going to actually have me go back and finish playing some of the games that I haven't finished and could probably continue to play right now. Like, for example, I haven't played Tears of the Kingdom. Oh, wow. That's going to be a really great launch game for me, because that's something that I did not want to play that game in 20 frames a second on the Switch. And I wasn't willing to go and spend the time to try to figure out how to emulate it, even though I know given enough time, I could have got that done, because that's how people were playing it at 60 frames a second. So I know I know it's possible. So there's going to be a handful of games that I'm really going to sit back and enjoy when I get my hands on the Switch too.
Yeah, I think that brings up a good point too, because I'm the same way. I'm at the point where like Xenoblade Chronicles X, I'm 30 hours in. It's a huge game. It's massive. It's a giant game. It's basically like a single player MMO, and we know we're getting an upgrade for that. There's a lot of questions around, will the upgrades, what will they cost? Well, we know we're getting free upgrades for a lot of games. Scarlet and Violet badly needs one, right? The enhancements to those games was always going to be the hardware in the end. Super Mario Odyssey is getting a free patch. There's like 7 or 8 games getting free patches that they've announced. Based on the cost of the physical versions of the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild Switch 2 SKUs, it seems like those upgrades, if you're not going to get them for free, are going to be $10, which I think is pretty reasonable.
$10 is reasonable. I've heard people speculate it might be 20, and 20 feels like
it could be more, but
Mhm.
you know, you look at the Tears of the Kingdom SKU cost $80 for the Switch 2 version. It cost $70 at launch on the Switch 1 back in 2022.
Mhm.
Breath of the Wild was $60. This one's $70 for the enhanced version. So you could say like, at most, like inflation might be off by $2 or $3 without accounting for that. So I think that's fine. And then there's games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, which I don't know what that will cost because you're also getting DLC with it as well.
The DLC I can see, like just like you point, and also Wes is pointing out, you get the enhancement and you get DLC. Honestly, I can't complain about that. If it's just an enhancement and you go more than $10, it does feel definitely greedy. But if you're like, hey, I'm adding in new content, then it's like, I've paid $20 for DLC. So that isn't anything that I feel like is it feels too inflationary perspective. One thing I was going to say that I really am happy about, game share.
Yes.
Because when it's said and done, especially if they're pushing where physical costs more, you know, to be able to share your game, it's like, if I get a game and I want to play it with my kids, and if I'm fortunate enough at some point in the future to be like, now I can afford Switch, you know, maybe the Switch 2 Lite when that rolls out, maybe here in a couple of years, at a obviously cheaper price, you know, like, now they've got these, do I have to go buy multiples of these games? And in this case, hopefully, obviously it'll be a game by game basis, but hopefully that means is like, no, I bought this game share, we're all playing it together, having a fun time. And then that will be something that I think would be huge, because we kind of do that with the Xbox. So like with Xbox, my home Xbox is where they can play all their games, and then they just sign me in on the other Xbox in the other room, and then they sign in as themselves, and then they can play all the games. So it's like it's really nice because I don't have to go buy multiple copies of games in order for us to be able to play together. We just kind of utilize the Xbox's ecosystem to do that.
Nintendo did communicate that in the most ridiculous Nintendo way, though, the other week when they're like, these virtual game cards. I was like, wait, what are they doing? Like, I got a little concerned about that. I think to GT's point, I am curious about what they will include with the live service pack in, right? Because there are clearly some games they're saying are free. One of the other things, too, is all your Switch 1 controllers will work with the Switch 2 and Switch 2 games. So, again, going back to like, kids, I am going to let my little Joey play on the Switch 1 Joy-Cons because I have a few of them. I don't want to buy more for him because he's a kid, right?
Yeah.
He's going to get applesauce or puffs all over him. He'll throw them. Kid's got an arm. It's concerning because he's aiming for the TV. So I think that's a nice thing too. So it's going to be interesting. I think the pain we're seeing now in terms of price and reaction is just the beginning of the next 3 or 4 years of realizing how things were underpriced for a lot of reasons. But that still doesn't take away the issues of the average consumer. Like I have this chart up here, the reflection of real wage growth versus inflation since 1979 to 2019. The top 10% earners in America saw a growth of 43%.
Mm-hmm.
Good for them. Still didn't keep up with inflation. Inflation was 250%. Middle 50% of earners, only a 6% growth, and the lowest 10% saw a negative 5% growth.
Yeah.
That's the reality all these game makers and publishers have to deal with. And it's a problem because costs are going up and the consumer wallet's not getting much bigger.
And you're not going to sell games to, you know, and that's why you'll see gamers find the value, because gaming is still the best, you know, terms of dollar per hour of like entertainment. And so I think you'll see all kinds of various different knock-on effects. And one of those being, it's like, maybe people don't upgrade to a Switch 2. Maybe they just stick with their current hardware and plays the games that they currently play and wait until the time. Because if you don't have the money, I wouldn't finance this. Like, I think that's a recipe for a lot of stress in this hobby that's supposed to be about having fun and you know whatnot. But it's a tough situation for a lot of people to be in because of, especially when you talk about the stagnation and the the loss in terms of if you're going to sell games at $50, you got to sell a lot of copies to make it up. And so they're trying to adjust that price. But I think what ends up happening is because of just historics, it's like, people aren't going to go out and buy the game unless they see that value proposition in it from the start. And I don't think we don't see a Baldur's Gate 3 year over year. So I think you're going to see declining sales. And then that's going to lead to either lowering of prices or, Nintendo is sitting on a mountain of money. So I don't think that they're too worried anytime soon. But I do think the Switch 2 is actually going to be a better position than the Wii U was positioned just from marketing alone. Yeah,
there's a lot of it. You're excited for the Switch 2 or the Wii U?
The Switch 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I am excited. Despite my saltiness, I am excited for two reasons. One, the technology leap, given that Nintendo is always at least 5 years behind, means that the Steam Deck 2 is going to be freaking amazing.
Oh, Steam Deck 2 is going to rock people's world.
And secondly, if they fail, I get to laugh. And if they succeed, I get to enjoy their success. So either way. What
would be a failure? What would be success? Because I don't think 2025 is where the test actually is applied. I think when you get into summertime 2026, when it's been out for a year, that's going to give us the insight into the industry. Are people willing to go to bat for Nintendo games? Because people praise Nintendo.
They're always going to have. Right? You're always going to have people who go to bat for Nintendo no matter what.
Right. What I'm saying is that you'll have people who say their lineup, their franchises are so strong. That's what sells the systems, which is true. But is there a price point in which that becomes not true? And I don't think we'll find that out this year, because I think the diehard fanboys and everybody else who's wanted an upgrade and etc., we're going to go out and buy every Switch that they can produce. We'll see. Who knows with the tariff conversation if that has any kind of real impact, because if all of a sudden they said
if it goes to $700,
hey, I know we said it was $450, now it's $520. You can thank tariffs. That becomes a whole thing where people are just like, whoa, now it's at first I had a hard time swallowing $450. Now you're asking me to stuff down another $80, and especially if you don't have the money.
For me, the $450 is not the problem. The problem is the pricing of the games.
Mm-hmm.
The games are, I understand inflation is a thing, but these are multi-billion-dollar gaming companies here. Okay, if they sell 10 million copies of a Nintendo game at $60 a piece, oh man, they only made $400 million of profit.
Mm-hmm.
What a loss, guys. You know what I mean? They didn't need to do that, and now everyone else is going to do it because they did. And that's just a net bad for the gaming community, unless you're on Steam, in which case you could just wait a year and a half and buy it for $5. So,
and not play it, because that's the true story.
What I was gonna say. In my Steam summer, so I don't think I've touched any of those games. Yeah, I think everyone else was going to do it, whether Nintendo did it or not. I mean, maybe they see it's more of a permission, but I think all those things you're talking about, what is the price point? I think it's relative to what are the price points of other options. And if tariffs are impacting the Switch 2, they're impacting everything else.
Yeah.
So you have the real cost of goods plus the additional cost of the tariffs. Say the Switch 2 is $500 for just the base model version. iPads are going to go up, because we're not getting manufacturing in the US anytime soon. And the reality is if you have manufacturing in the US, you also have better paid employees making it too. So the cost will be reflected in that as well. They're not going to get them a tablet.
That's fine. I'll pay a premium to have products that aren't made by slave labor. That's cool.
I'm right there with you, 100% right there with you. And I will say, at least with my experience in working with manufacturers in Vietnam, manufacturers like Foxconn, it's not slave labor, but in terms of what they make compared to what we make, it's night and day. But the cost of living is also incredibly cheap. I ate a king for $10 in so many days. But so that I think that's the question, is as a parent, I could feel pretty confident that 2-3 years from now, I have Joey probably starting the game more on his own, and I have my other baby, right? I'm going to go out and look at my options. Steam Deck 2 is not going to be $550 at launch.
No.
Right?
No, it's probably going to be less.
You think less?
I think so. I think it will be.
I don't know. I mean, I would be surprised, and it'd be great if they can do that. But I think the approach Steam Deck has had so far, I think it's going to be more expensive. It might be the same if they go with an LCD screen, you know, and a
Maybe.
higher
Yeah,
refresh rate.
maybe. Yeah, I mean, it
PlayStation,
really depends.
it
But
does.
I think for them the big cost is the chips, 100%.
Yes,
Because the
chips.
OLED screens, the PCBs, the buttons, that stuff's all dirt cheap when you buy it in bulk. You know, it's the chips that's going to be the real cost.
It's
All
the
right.
Yeah, you want to wrap it up? It's 5
Yeah,
o'clock.
I mean,
Oh, sorry, guys.
it's an hour, so it's like we try to keep it at that. Mark, where can people find you?
You could find me at Late to the Game on YouTube and Twitch, and also at my full name, Mark Liberto, on Twitter. I'm not a very spicy tweeter at all. I don't say much on there, but I like a lot of things. So yeah, that's where you could find me.
Scrag, how about you?
You can find me on Twitch, Scrag underscore or underscore Scrag. I can't remember which one. I also have a YouTube channel, which I think is .scrag. I don't know. Just search Scrag. You'll find me eventually.
SCRAGG. All right.
Yeah, it's been on the podcast the whole time. But yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys for joining. Thanks for this roundtable. I think it's an interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to being able to continue these discussions here in 2025. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you all have a wonderful, fantastic week, and we'll see you next time.